people ask for tips on how to get started playing RPGs, things to help them, design new adventures, or tips on how to get moving quickly, stay organized, things that I use to help me play games. So the following are things that I've just picked up and started using to help me run games. Just tools that I use, you know what I mean? So the first thing that I should talk about are just things to put on the table, for the maps and the miniatures and things like that. How to get them or where to get them and things like that. And actually, it's been a long time since I've had to buy any of them, so the landscape on this may have changed. Your mileage may vary, but this can be as simple as just going to the local game store. Unfortunately, I think the local game store scene may have changed a lot. I think a lot of the brick and mortar stores have been kind of forced out by the evil mega corporations, but maybe not. But so maybe the brand names may have changed, but the theory is still the same. Okay, so what I'm talking about is back in my day, we had pewter and even lead figurines that you had to paint by hand, which I was never any good at. But so me and my friends, we would sit around the store all day when we had a lot more time and paint them by hand, or I had someone else paint the majority of them for me. No, I painted a lot of them. But when I was also working there, the newest thing was pre-painted miniatures. The first to come around, at least in my experience, was called Mage Knight, in which they had little miniatures that were already, mass-produced on their own little plastic stands. And these were actually to scale on most battle mats. So let's face it, they were not very well painted, but they were painted, and they had a pretty good shape, and you could paint them yourself if you wanted. So there were a lot of different types of those. There were the miniatures were by companies called like Ralpartha. I don't think that they don't exist anymore, but you can find them if you wanted to, like eBay. They're probably not in still packaging. They're probably worth a lot more still in packaging, but those are the ones I used. There's a lot of different pewter miniatures and stuff like that, but the far more sensible option nowadays is to go with kind of prepackaged, pre-painted miniatures, especially if you're not interested in learning how to paint them, or you just want to get started quickly. I remember Wizards of the Coast and WizKids did a line of Dungeons and Dragons miniatures that were pre-painted, and in fact had basically a very, very simple, streamlined version of the combat rules attached to them, which was basically just 3rd edition without the role-playing attached to it. That were just the miniatures, and these are the ones I have with me in this little plastic bin. The downside is they were basically like a collectible card game in that you got them in starters and booster packs, so you really didn't get a very even distribution. You didn't get to pick the kind of monsters you got. They were random, and that sucked. The upside is, I guess, they were reasonably priced, but you didn't get to pick. The upside is, I guess, if it were really common monsters, you got a lot of those, but if you're looking for anything larger scale, like dragons and stuff like that, you didn't get those, unless they were like rares. Also, you tended to get a lot of really weirdish monsters you were never likely to use unless you had to force them in there. What the fuck is this? Rack Spawn. He's kind of cool looking. Although fucking autofocus. I'm sorry about the focus. It looks like a fucking skinless gorilla with a bone spear with 3 arms. Sorry, man. I gotta use my other camera for this. Yeah, Rack Spawn. What I would do, though, is I just ignored the thing is, the reason they gave you the names is so you could go in the monster manual and look them up. They gave you a simplified version of the monster as a card, but for the miniature war game that was attached to the game. But usually in the monster manual, they had the monster listed, so you could use it that way. Sometimes what I would do is I would make a monster up that looked like this in the game, and then put it in there. As sometimes like a boss monster. So like I might say that like some evil mage had crafted this as like some kind of abomination and used this as like a boss monster, and I would do that. It would be really cool looking, and almost in that way it was scarier. But yeah, you had things like bugbears. I always loved bugbears, and this is the bugbear in his "come at me, bro" stance. Honestly, some really cool poses, some really cool paint jobs. I think this is a frost dwarf. So I got this whole bin of them. Some of them I just collected because nobody else wanted them. Some people were just giving them up. I mean, it's not this because they're lame, but a lot of them are just kind of really troglodytes. Ooh, I like those. A lot of these are really, really awesome. Warforged Captain. This was when they were doing Eberron really heavy. Warforged. Basically, they're like magically animated robots. Deep Dwarf. Duragar Slaver. Cubone from Pokemon? Looks like a Cubone. Ophidian. That looks like a Cubone. Howling Orc. So yeah, if you're looking for like monsters, this is a pretty good start. And it saves you the time of having to paint all of them, especially if you're the DM and you need monsters. Yeah, good luck with that. If you're trying to paint like an orc horde, or if you need like some kind of dragon, yeah, back in the day you had to paint those if you wanted like painted shit. But the downside of having these is now you have to organize them. Now you have to find a system to organize them. And when you have tons of these, and I actually do not have many of these. I have about 8 bins of these, and they are not very well organized. Because this, monster minis, that's stupid. These large monster minis. Actually, this isn't a bad term for it, because I don't have that many large monster minis. Like, this is Big Green Slod. That's a Slod. This is Minotaur? Feral Minotaur. He's feral. He's scary. I don't even know. Lil End. Hey, finally a dragon. He's a dragon. Ooh. A giant. Hill giant. So yeah. Ooh, like a fire elemental type thing. So yeah, I've got frost giant there. So, but when you start getting, it really gets bad when it comes to the human-sized, the person type of miniatures. So like I've got, like I call them, what I would do is I'd call them hero miniatures, and then like if they were like normal animal type miniatures, I would kind of separate them like this. So like if you had, like wolves or spiders or something like that, rats or badgers. I don't need no stinking badgers. But yeah, so if it was kind of an animal or an insect or something that's relatively found in nature, then I had a bin for that. If there were like something that you would players would choose for their heroes, I kind of put them in this bin. Things that were more suited to evil characters, I had a bin for that. But yeah, I knew a lot of people who, when they had just tons and tons and tons of them, had to separate them serious like subdivisions for them, like dwarves, halflings, humans, elves, because you had so many of them. If you ever wanted to find anything, you had to. So yeah, you had to get. That's your kind of curse for those. Painted miniatures. The downside of those, aside from having to paint them, some of them are very fragile. The lead ones are very soft. That they will bend, and you can't eat them. Sometimes, the newer ones I can snack on them if I want to. Some of them are fragile. You have to glue them together. Sometimes you actually have to drill them and put pins in them to put together. If they're larger, like some like dragon kits and stuff like that. Painting them is not necessarily a downside if you enjoy that kind of thing. I liked painting a lot of mine, but it's very, very time consuming. So usually I would only do that for like the larger ones because they were easier, actually, the bigger surfaces. But the biggest downside for me was they took up a lot more space because you can't just throw them in a bin because that damages the paint. They'll chip and scratch. So you have to keep them in essentially a miniatures package, or don't keep them in a package at all, like a miniatures case that's like essentially got a case that has foam padding to keep them separate from banging into each other. And that is relatively costly and inconvenient. It's that way if you want to take them anywhere. So if you're a DM and you have to travel to someone's house, that's massively inconvenient. If you're a player, well, you only have to take one figure. So, like, if you have a favorite miniature to use, well, you can paint your own and bring them. That's fine. But I find a lot of people just tend to pick a miniature out of like the D&D painted figures. I know there's a lot of like hero clicks. I never like to use hero clicks. I don't know if they're to scale. If they match the scale to most maps that people use, and I'll talk about the maps in a second. The last thing that people use, and I'm not the hugest fan of this either, but it's growing on me because of how easy it is and how easy it is to organize. And I swear to you, I am not pushing Pathfinder. I'm not being paid because I've seen a lot of this type of product a lot of other places, but Pathfinder has really been doing a lot of this. Is essentially like cardboard standees. For instance, this isn't punched, but I will punch one for you. So let me see an example. Okay. So you've got monsters on like punch cards, or you know what I mean. You've got monsters that you can punch out. So let's say, for instance, I want a fire elemental. Well, you've got this sheet here full of all these monsters, and there's a fire elemental right there. Well, it's as easy as punching this little fucker out. And you get a monster base. And it's to scale. It's got a little plastic base. And you put it in the base. And you got a fire elemental. You put it on the map. It's got two sides. You got a miniature. There you go. And so you can do this. This is a box of little monster standees, but they have. I believe the Pathfinder has this for like. There's at least 3 boxes for monsters. I think there's at least one for just like adventure types. So the big upside to this is that they're cheap. You get all these monsters for, I think it's like $30-35, which isn't insignificant. But in the context of how many of these you get, that is certainly more feasible for, you know, like a game than buying like painted miniatures and stuff like that, just from sheer volume. So like if you don't have a lot of money and you want to help the group out, like everyone can chip in maybe and like pick up one of these boxes. Another option that is even cheaper is this is not the only product. This is the Pathfinder Bestiary box. It's not the only option. The other options, I have seen stuff like this from like independent press. Again, I don't know the name of the product itself. I still kind of hang out on, I visit sometimes like greenronin.com, and there are various independent websites that publish like self-published books and books and products, role-playing type stuff. So people will publish their own adventure modules, unlicensed type type of things. And some people, what they'll do is they will publish their own type of thing for this. So you'll sometimes see them in like game stores where you don't need to be licensed to sell little cardboard miniature standees, you know. So what you can do is those are like they're print and play. So you can buy the digital download of these particular books and then print them and then cut them out and essentially fold them in half and then stand them up. And there you go. And those are going to be really cheap because you print them yourself. And you can, they're much more specialized because what a lot of them do is they sell them particular to exactly the kind of creature or race or class that you want. So like if you want standees for like dragons, or you want standees for elementals or something like that, they probably have, you know, a little PDF file just specifically for dragons or, you know, seafaring creatures, you know what I mean? So they'll probably for like $3 have, you know, all the fucking elementals in one book, all the dragons in one book that you can print up. They're in color and they can do that. I don't have a website for that specifically, but you know, you can find these printable, you know, download to print type products for even a lot cheaper than this. The big strength of this is basically the quality of the art and the fact that these can be punched out, and it's nicely indexed. It tells you exactly what you're going to get. You know, the bases are included. The bases aren't included with the downloadable stuff. So it's mainly production value. That's the big strength here. More expensive, but you know, the downloadable stuff there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It just comes down to personal preference on that one. The stands are very nice, though. I've actually used the download to play ones quite a lot before these even existed. So as for the battle mats, there are several ways to go for this one. The newest thing, and this is another thing where I don't know what's going on with that stuff now. I know for a fact that there's a thing where like there's almost like a 3D type of like dungeon tile where like it's like textured. They're like not tangible, but like puzzle pieces, but like raised like half-inch deep puzzle pieces that you like clamp together. It's got like raised walls and stuff like that. I don't know who has that much disposable income. I mean, I have all this shit and I don't have that much disposable income. No. But a long time ago I got these. They're called dungeon tiles. And there's a lot of different sets of these. This one in particular is not punched. They are tiles, like cards, that have like shapes of caves, okay? And the way it works is, you can see this picture, you can fit the various map pieces together to form your own dungeon map. For instance, if you can see on that little map you can see here, you can make this map with the little cards on the dungeon tiles to build your own encounter, and the players, there's little, the maps, the tiles are broken up into a grid, so the miniatures can move between each space as if it was, you know, the battle map. So each one is basically a 5-foot square. So that's how that works. And you can change, you know, changing the battle map is as simple as picking up the cards and, you know, putting them back down again. So there's a lot of different types of these. You know, this one is mainly caverns, you know, underground caverns and like temples and stuff like that. There's some for, you know, outside forests, deserts, arcane towers, a lot of caves because it's dungeons, you know. Halls of the Giant Kings. there's a lot of them. I don't know if they're still in print. Probably not, but I'm guessing there's some kind of variant of them now, and I'm guessing there's a lot of download to print ones of those too. The downside of these, and this is a big downside, is that once you've punched them out, they are punched out. And you have to have another way of organizing these somehow, because now you've got a shitload of loose tiles just laying around. And how do you organize them? Well, I guess you can organize them by, like, underground, outside, underground. Yeah, so when you're trying to make a map as a DM, you're like, you're trying to replicate the map you had in mind, and you probably, I have not used these very much, actually. You probably will not be able to find what you need quickly, although, I don't know, dungeon maps are probably never really that complicated. A big strength of these, and I do like this part a lot, is that it does feature the various spaces on the map. Like, you can see this little craggy this little craggy outcropping. This is detail that you wouldn't necessarily get on a hand-drawn map. So you can represent this as very difficult terrain to traverse. So you can be like, well, this kind of isolates the map. If you want to jump down here, you got to make a jump check, or like, this is kind of cool. You know, if you want to, this can inspire you to, you know, create a barrier across the field that might not otherwise be there in the encounter the way you initially imagined it. So during the fight, you might have them jump over this chasm. You know, you might see this and be inspired to do this. It also, a lot of times in the book, you see rules for, like, difficult terrain, you know, and you're like, oh, that sounds cool. But when it comes down to it, when you're designing the encounter, you forget to put things like difficult terrain in there, even though it's really cool and you wish you'd use it more. So difficult terrain is included in those map tiles, and those are really cool to see and use. Those are often used in modules. Organizing them, yeah, kind of a bitch. What I have used, and this is something I have used since 1997, this is the exact one I've used, is basically a vinyl battle mat. And this is it. This is a nightmare of squares. This is a rather large mat. And what you do, if you don't know, is you take a wet erase marker, and you draw the map on this. Simple as that. That's the way we did it back in my day. Didn't have no dungeon tiles. Didn't have none of that. And when you were done with the mat, you took a wet cloth and you wiped it down and it was gone. I have had assholes write on this map with permanent markers. The big things to remember when you're doing this is you gotta clean the map off when you're done with it. And you've got to, you can't leave shit on this map, even if it is with a wet erase marker. You can't leave it on there even overnight, because it'll stain. There's a lot of stains on this map. Not all of it marker. No, there's a lot of stains on this map. That you can't see it on camera, but you know, if you want your map to remain nice, you got to keep it clean. If you can't draw, like I can't, something as simple as a ruler will help. The downside to this is it can be very time-consuming to draw your map. And sometimes you don't always want your entire map to be revealed all at once, but you can draw pretty much anything on it that you want. So you can draw the overhead map of the dungeon on it if you like, or you can just draw the immediate encounter. But that's the great thing about this, is you can draw anything. You know what I mean? By that I mean you can draw the map, you can draw the initiative order, you can draw notes. You know, you can just clean it off. You know, you can draw hit point totals, you can draw the players can draw on it if they want. You know, you can draw you can modify the map as you see fit. So like if rubble is falling down on the map, you can block sections off. If something is on fire that blocks something off, you can draw fire on the map. It's really cool. You can have different colored markers and do cool things. You can get artistic with this shit. The downside is it takes a while to draw things, especially if you're not very good. But you can change things. So that's also very good. If you're fast, then it's friggin' beautiful. Wet erase markers. Not dry erase markers. They don't erase off of this. This I got from Chessex. Definitely not the only place you can get this. They come in various sizes. Measure your table before you buy one, because they come in various shapes and sizes, obviously. You can easily get too large. You can get some that are like blankets, and you will feel like a fool for having bought too large of one. And you'll also feel like a fool for buying way too small of one. So measure your table out and find which one you like. Also, be careful that you get one with whichever one you like. Some have squares, some have hexes, some have both. Some have like hexes on one side, squares on the other. Mine only has squares because I've only really ever needed squares. But if you're a big like MechWarrior fan, you want hexes. A lot of games have hexes involved. So like if you're a tabletop wargamer, this is actually hex map is actually really cool, because now you can draw whatever map you want, and not just rely on like, you know, you don't have to use built terrain necessarily. Although built terrain is really cool, but you can build your own little ad hoc war map on it. You know, even though line of sight is still an issue, which isn't replicated by that. But you know what I mean. So these. I don't really know how much these cost nowadays. I'm guessing around like $35, $40. I'm probably highballing that one, really. But these are really, if you're going to go with anything, I would really go with this as a starting point. A vinyl mat for these. These are not hard to find. Probably not something you would find on Amazon, but I don't know. I would start with this. And then, if you're gonna do like dungeon tiles, like start from this and go with like dungeon tiles from there, because you can always add the tiles to this, but you'll want this. So that's where you want to go. Now maps themselves for the dungeons, as in the map of the dungeon, has always been my weakest point as a DM. I cannot draw at all. I don't have any kind of like, even as a creative person, which I consider myself fairly creative, I cannot come up with any kind of conception of what a dungeon floor plan looks like. I can't do it. I cannot spatially plan out such a thing. It's like Legos. I can't do anything with Legos. It's weird. It's weird how my brain just shuts down when it comes to building something with Legos. You give me a pile of Legos and you're like, build something, I go, I don't know what. You got to tell me what. Because otherwise I'll just build a cube. Some of you guys will build the fucking Arc de Triomphe. In fact, no, that's boring. You'll build something. But like, I'll be like, build a dungeon. I'll be like, I don't know, like, even if I kind of know what I want it to look like, it'll usually be like really boringly symmetrical. I don't know, you wouldn't think that with the way my brain works. Like, you'd think like I'd just be completely chaotic and creative and come up with something awesome. But no, that's not how, like, the encounters themselves, like plot lines, you know, schemes within schemes, I can do that. But no, floor plans, can't do it. So, if you need help coming up with maps and you can't draw, well, here's the solution I've come up with. Steal them! And there's a lot of places you can steal them from. And those are pre-published adventure modules. I don't usually steal the modules themselves, I just steal the maps. And so all these things up here, well, not all these things, but pretty much anything that looks like an adventure module is something that I can steal a map from. So, for instance, and these are some of the stuff up here. some of these are basically made to steal maps from. One of the best ones that I have found is I still feel bad about how badly beaten up this one is. This box has been destroyed because I used to pack this in my backpack to basically the first gaming group I ever had, which is why this box is just obliterated. It's called Descent. The Ruins of Undermountain. And what it is it's this massive dungeon crawl. So much so that it's never been finished. And it's never meant to be finished. It's just this bottomless dungeon. The end has never been written. The end boss of the dungeon, at least in AD&D, has never been statted. At least I don't think so. They've probably given stats. His name is Hallister Blackcloak. They've probably given stats, but the encounter, they've never written the encounter where you meet Hallister Blackcloak. I don't think has ever been put in. There's 2 box sets, this and Ruins of Undermountain 2, and I think there's a Lost Levels of Undermountain, but you never actually meet Hallister. But yeah, the map of Ruins of Undermountain, there's 3 levels that they've given maps for, but even the first level is so huge that they've only populated encounters for a fifth of it. This is the map of the first level. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You could play this module your whole life and never finish this fucking level. So, yeah. If I ever need, a dungeon, I can just go here and, go clip. I can... let's see. And that one's a fairly structured one. That one's, built, fairly with a regular pattern. So is this one, really. This is level 3. If you finally get down here, this one's fairly orderly, really. At least as far as I can tell. Oh, yeah. There's a big worship area here, or throne room or something. But yeah, a lot of this area has been given write-ups, but yeah, a lot of it has not. So it basically just tells you, the immediate area around, the landings have been given attributes, but the rest we leave for you to fill in. So that's kind of the greatness of this particular module and the one that follows it. I'm not telling you to buy that one. I'm just saying, that's an example of, stealing maps from a area that's kind of meant to be stolen from. There's a lot of modules. Basically, if you just pick a published module, there's just dungeon maps or castle maps or town maps. If you want a town, you can just look in a module for a town. And if you like the town, you can just use it. You can use the people in the town. It's as simple as that. There are certain areas, if you like an area, some of the best modules, or I don't know if the module is the right word for it, but some of the best published material in the history of the game doesn't have a linear plot at all. Keep on the Borderlands isn't an adventure module. It's almost like a campaign setting, but it's like a geographical area that's just been defined. So it gives you this. It basically gives you a map of a 50-mile square region, to where there's a castle, and just the immediate region around the castle, and it just gives the DM depictions of the landmarks and various encounters the party might meet along the way. But there's not a particular adventure around there, but there's things to meet and things to encounter. So, like, there might be a warband of orcs kind of kidnapping people along the trail, but there's not a guy necessarily, like, there's not an overarching campaign, not a guy who's like, you know, you need to go wipe out these orcs. They're going after the Ruby of Hallister, you know, something like that. It's stuff that's, it's an area with stuff that the party can discover and stuff that they can do on their own initiative. So but yeah, if you need trouble, if you need maps or stuff like that, just look in other games and stuff like that. One of the best resources I've ever found was Dungeon Magazine, no longer in print, but not impossible to find. And in fact, I believe there is they've released like digital archives. So there's probably like legal PDF backups of the entire run of Dungeon Magazine. I cannot be sure of that. Don't quote me on that. But like, actually, I probably just asked you to quote me on that. But Dungeon Magazine was such a great resource for me. You know, because it was just like it was independently published modules that people would send into the magazine, and then they would print them. And so every month you would get like 3 new adventures that you could then play. Very short, short-ish modules that you could complete in a week or two. And they had, you know, people would give you maps essentially. So I like those a lot. So that's my secret. Don't tell anyone. What else would I do? I'll tell you something I like, and I'll tell you something why I don't like it. This is the Game Mastery Combat Pad. I'll tell you why I like this, and I'll tell you something that may be a lot better option for you. This is a little magnetic board, and it basically is an initiative tracker. So on the right side here, it has a track for everyone's initiative. So it basically counts from 0 to like 35. So basically what you do is you have these little magnetic strips, which you write the name of everyone in the party on one of these strips, the name of every monster on another strip, and then you arrange them on the list in order of their initiative. So all you have to do is move the arrow as the round continues down the chart, so you know whose initiative it is, and move all this shit out of the way. And then when the round's up, you move the arrow back to the top, you move the turn counter, and you keep going. It's a really handy way to keep track of the initiative. Easy as that. And you can keep track of little conditions by making notes on these little, on the side here and stuff like that. And for some reason, it's got 2 sides. Same thing on 2 sides. I don't know. Here's why I don't like it. It's really overproduced, and the magnets don't stick very well. It's pretty old, so there's probably a better alternative out there. This is also something, if you're at all handy, you probably look at that and you're like, I could do something better myself. You can. In fact, for the longest time, I just used a whiteboard with dry erase markers. Don't use wet erase markers on a whiteboard. This is where you got to be careful. Whiteboard, dry erase markers. With a whiteboard, you can do the same thing. You can write everyone's name in initiative order. You can write notes on the thing and just kind of keep that near you and just do it that way. It's very simple. Also, if you want to do the little magnetic tape thing, you can, Oreos here. You can, I believe they sell like magnetic tape strips, or you can make those and cut them out and then, you know, put those on the board yourself in order and move them around. It's a really handy idea. I like that a lot. So yeah, it's a really good idea. I just don't think you need to get that thing. It's kind of cool, but the magnets are weak and I think it's a little overproduced. I just used a whiteboard. But yeah, you'd be surprised. I like having things to write on, you know. So as a DM, just use a notepad. But if you want things that the players can keep track of, the vinyl mat, great idea. For quick reference, having a whiteboard behind you or something like that with dry erase markers is a really handy way to keep track of initiative, especially when initiative order is likely to change quite a bit, or to keep track of modifiers. In 4th edition, this is huge. In 4th edition, keeping track of all the marks on people and all the damage conditions on everybody, that's why I like the vinyl mat, is because when people have like bleeding effects on stuff, on themselves, being able to just write in front of you, bleeding 2 per turn, you can remember this now, because it's in front of you. So that's, yeah, vinyl mat. Used it since fucking 1996, 1997 or something like that. Tried and true. DM's Swiss Army mat. I don't know. But yeah, those are pretty much the tools of the trade I've used since the beginning. That and basically a CD player running very quietly classical music. I find having music playing very quietly kind of helps break awkward silences. Sometimes people are just kind of sitting there silently chewing Doritos, and that's kind of an uncomfortable sound. Yeah, have some music playing quietly. That's about it. Just remember which markers you're using, otherwise you're going to piss somebody off, and it's usually the DM. So don't piss the DM off. That's it. Bye.